There is a silent prison that millions of people live in every single day. A prison with no guards, no bars, no walls. Yet it decides how you love, how you work, and how you suffer. It shapes the choices you make, the mistakes you repeat, and the patterns that never seem to end. Most people believe they are free. They believe they are in control of their lives. But what if that freedom is an illusion? Imagine someone who keeps switching careers, always chasing recognition, yet always ending up undervalued. Or someone who jumps from one relationship to another, only to find the same heartbreak waiting in a new disguise. Different jobs, different partners, different cities. And yet, the same story repeats. You may think it's bad luck, or maybe the world is unfair. But what if none of that is true? What if the real problem isn't out there, but in here? The truth is unsettling. The conflicts that repeat in your life are not random. They're not accidents. They're not punishments from the universe. They are mirrors, reflections of the unresolved patterns you carry inside. Psychologists have known this for more than a century. Philosophers hinted at it long before, and neuroscience today confirms it. Your external world is deeply tied to the hidden structures of your inner world. In this video, we're going to explore this invisible prison in detail. We'll uncover why you feel stuck, even when you try to start fresh. We'll reveal the hidden scripts that keep shaping your life. And, most importantly, we'll learn how to finally break free. Because here's the truth you need to hear. Nothing out there will change until something in here does. At the heart of this prison lies a silent repetition, a cycle so subtle that most people never see it. Yet it quietly directs their entire lives. Different faces, different settings, the same story. Think of the person who always ends up with a critical boss. They change jobs, hoping for peace, but the new manager eventually becomes just as demanding, just as dismissive. Or the person who constantly attracts partners who betray them. They swear it will be different this time, but it never is. The names change, the scenery changes, but the wound remains, faithfully recreated. Sigmund Freud was one of the first to notice this. In 1920, he described a phenomenon he called the compulsion to repeat. His patients, wounded in childhood, would unconsciously recreate those wounds as adults. A child abandoned by a parent might seek out relationships where abandonment feels inevitable. A child who had to earn love through perfection might grow into an adult forever chasing approval, never feeling enough. Freud realized something disturbing. People are not always guided by the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. Sometimes they are driven to repeat pain again and again without realizing it. Why does this happen? Because the wounded child inside us never disappears. It waits, silently, for a new chance to resolve the story. It creates new versions of the same situation, hoping this time things will turn out differently. But here's the tragedy. Most of the time the script doesn't change. The new situation only repeats the old wound. And so, the trauma perpetuates. This is the first layer of the invisible prison, the compulsion to repeat. It's not conscious. It's not voluntary. It is programming, emotional blueprints written deep inside, long before you ever had the power to question them. That's why life feels like an endless loop. It's not chance. It's not fate. It's the structure of the mind projecting itself outward. And until you recognize the pattern, the mirror will keep reflecting the same pain, over and over. Freud uncovered the compulsion to repeat. But decades later, another psychologist revealed an equally powerful truth. The mind doesn't simply replay the past, it also distorts the present. Aaron Beck, one of the fathers of cognitive psychology, discovered that people don't just experience reality, they interpret it through mental schemas. Schemas are invisible lenses, formed mostly in childhood, that filter everything you see, hear, and feel. If you carry a rejection schema, a friend's silence feels like abandonment. An unanswered message confirms the belief that you're unworthy. Even a compliment might be twisted into sarcasm. If you carry a failure schema, every setback becomes proof that you're not good enough. If you carry a mistrust schema, every act of kindness hides an agenda. The world doesn't appear as it is. It appears as your schemas allow you to see it. Here's the cruel irony. These schemas don't just distort your perception, they influence your behavior. If you believe you are unlovable, you may push people away, sabotage intimacy, or cling to those who treat you poorly. If you believe the world is hostile, you may withdraw, attack first, or live in constant suspicion. And what happens then? Your actions create situations that confirm your beliefs. The schema strengthens. The prophecy fulfills itself. This is the second layer of the invisible prison. The bars are not physical. They are made of distorted thoughts, unconscious filters, and outdated programs. You may believe you're escaping by changing jobs, partners, or places, but if the lens remains the same, the world will look the same, no matter where you go. And the most dangerous part? These schemas feel familiar. Even when they cause suffering, the mind clings to them because they feel safe. And so you remain trapped, not because escape is impossible, but because the prison feels like home. So far we've seen two forces: the compulsion to repeat the past, and the mental lenses that distort the present. Now, let's bring them together into one principle that changes everything. The mirror principle. It is the idea that your external reality is, almost always, a reflection of your internal reality. The world around you mirrors the beliefs, emotions, and unresolved wounds you carry inside. It is not mysticism. It is not magic. It is psychology. It is neuroscience. And it is the silent law behind much of human suffering. Picture two people walking down the exact same street. One feels secure, open, curious. They notice opportunities, smiles, possibilities. The other feels anxious, unwanted, indifferent. Same environment, two completely different realities. Because the mirror each one carries inside shapes what they see outside. Here's the trap. The reflection looks so real, so convincing, that you don't recognize it as a reflection at all. You think this is just how the world is. But it isn't. It's how your mind makes the world appear. This is why so many people believe their suffering comes from the outside, from their boss, their partner, the economy, or fate. But what they're really seeing is the projection of their own unresolved patterns. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Nothing out there will ever change until something in here does. You can move cities, switch partners, start over again and again. But sooner or later, the same script will unfold, because the mirror hasn't changed. This is the third layer of the prison, the mirror that turns your inner world into your outer experience. And unless you learn how to polish this mirror, you'll keep mistaking your own reflection for reality itself. At this point, the truth may feel heavy. If your life is shaped by wounds, distorted lenses, and invisible mirrors, how can you ever escape? The answer lies in one of the greatest discoveries of modern science: neuroplasticity. For centuries, people believed the brain was fixed, that after childhood, your mental patterns were set in stone, that your personality, habits, and wounds were permanent. But neuroscience shattered this illusion. We now know the brain is plastic. It changes itself structurally and functionally throughout life. Your mind is not a prison made of stone. It is a living system, constantly rewiring itself.
Think of your brain as a vast forest. Every thought you repeat is like walking down a path. The more you walk it, the clearer it becomes. Eventually, it turns into a trail, then a road, then a highway. This is how destructive beliefs become automatic. I'm not enough. No one cares. I always fail. They become the highways your brain travels without effort. But here's the good news. You can carve new paths. At first, it's hard. You cut through branches, stumble, face resistance. But if you keep walking the new path, it becomes easier. The old one, unused, begins to disappear. This is not theory, it is practice. Every time you challenge a distorted thought, you weaken the old road. Every time you journal honestly, observe your emotions, or meditate with awareness, you carve a new one. Therapeutic writing, mindfulness, visualization, reframing, conscious action. Each of these is like taking another step down the new trail. Over time, the brain adapts. Neural pathways shift. The mirror begins to change. And here is something even more extraordinary. The brain does not fully distinguish between vivid imagination and reality. When you deeply visualize a new behavior, a new reaction, or a new self, your brain fires as if it were real, which means you can begin sculpting your future before it arrives. But beware, neuroplasticity cuts both ways. If you constantly feed your mind with self-criticism, toxic thoughts, and destructive environments, you reinforce the prison. The brain does not judge. It only repeats what you give it. So the challenge is clear. Take responsibility for what you feed your mind, because the same mechanism that kept you trapped is the very mechanism that can set you free. Now that we know the brain can change, there's a subtle trap almost everyone falls into. We try to change life by changing the scenery. A new job, a new city, a new partner. And for a short time, it feels different, fresh, hopeful, liberating. The novelty distracts the mind. The environment looks new, and for a while, the pain seems distant. But soon, almost inevitably, the same patterns return. Different faces, same arguments. Different office, same frustrations. Different relationship, same heartbreak. Why? Because you can change the stage. But if the protagonist stays the same, the story doesn't change. It's like swapping costumes in a play. The actors change, the set changes, but the script, the unconscious script, remains identical. The wounded child is still writing the dialogue. The distorted schemas are still directing the plot. And as long as the inner structure remains untouched, the outer world reorganizes itself to replay the same drama. This is the blind spot of most fresh start journeys. People believe distance equals freedom, but they bring their ghosts with them. And because the mirror always reflects what's inside, the new reality begins to look strangely familiar. It's not that life is punishing you. It's that life is showing you. Every repetition is a reflection urging you to finally face what you've been avoiding. So here lies the lesson. You can change the scenery 100 times, but until you change the one who walks onto the stage, You'll keep watching the same story unfold again and again. If the mirror keeps repeating your pain, if new beginnings only recycle old endings, then the only way out is through. And this demands something rare, something most people spend their whole lives avoiding: radical responsibility. Responsibility does not mean blaming yourself. It does not mean you asked for your wounds or that your suffering is your fault. It means recognizing that while you cannot always control what happened to you, you can decide what you will do with it now. Blame keeps you stuck. Responsibility sets you free. But here's why most resist it. Radical responsibility is uncomfortable. It strips away excuses. It forces you to face the truth that nothing changes until you do. And the ego hates this. The ego prefers to point fingers outward at partners, bosses, governments, destiny, because blaming others feels easier than transforming yourself. Yet every cycle, every trigger, every frustration is not punishment. It is instruction. Life is not attacking you. It is showing you the parts of yourself that are unhealed. Every time you feel the sting of rejection, the burn of anger, the ache of fear, that is the mirror calling you home, not to shame you, but to invite you to grow. True transformation begins the moment you stop waiting for the world to change and start changing yourself. It begins the moment you choose to question your thoughts, to sit with your pain instead of running from it, to see every repeated pattern not as a curse, but as a teacher. This is radical responsibility. The decision to own your inner world, not as a burden, but as your path to freedom. Because here is the final truth. As long as you fight the mirror, the reflection stays the same. But the moment you change yourself, the entire image begins to transform. We have reached the end of this journey. And now there is no more space for illusions. If you want a different life, you must become a different person. Not by changing partners, jobs, or cities, by transforming the very structure of your mind. Your suffering does not only come from the world. It comes from the way you interpret the world, from the filters you use, the unconscious scripts you repeat, the stories you never questioned. But here is the key. If these patterns were learned, they can be unlearned. If your brain was programmed for repetition, it can be reprogrammed for freedom. And if your mirror has been clouded by wounds, it can be polished to reflect a reality you truly desire. This will not happen overnight. It requires courage, the courage to look within, to face your pain, to claim your responsibility. But every step you take rewires the path. Every new choice shifts the mirror. And little by little, the prison doors open. So when the old patterns rise again, don't see them as failures. See them as reminders. Reminders. If this message spoke to you, don't let it end here. Take a moment to share your reflections in the comments, because your story might be the mirror someone else needs to finally see their own patterns. And if you want to keep walking this path of self-discovery together, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with a friend who's searching for answers. The invisible prison is real, but so is the key. And the more of us who choose to turn that key, the more we begin to change, not just our own lives, but the world we reflect back into.